Yesterday morning, I dozily shuffled out of my bedroom to find a perturbing door at the far end of my upstairs landing. The festering woodwork, coated in a layer of peeling purple paint, did not horrify me. What horrified me was that I had lived at the property for 5 years. There had never been a door at the end of the corridor. Even from a distance, I could tell that the ghastly gateway was more than a propped-up plank of wood. It was flush against the outer wall of the house. Before I even considered opening it, I went outside to explore the side alley. The right-hand wall of my home remained as flat as ever. There were no extensions to the original brickwork. The purple doorway couldn't be leading to anything. Behind it, I knew there shouldn't be anything but white plaster. I'm a firm believer in not prodding the unknown. I've watched enough horror films to know that I should listen to my preservation instinct rather than my curiosity. That was why I rang my wife. Well, ex-wife. "What do you want, Ethan?" Hannah asked, sighing. Something weird happened at the house. There's a door," I said. "What? Why are you ringing, Ethan? I told you that you couldn't keep doing this." "I know, but..." "Sorry, let me explain," I pleaded. "There's a door at the end of my hallway that wasn't there last night. I've never seen it before." "Are you drunk again?" Hannah asked. "It's 10 in the morning." "I'm not drunk," I insisted. "I haven't had a drink in weeks. I really care about you, Ethan," Hannah interrupted. "You know I do. And I'll always love you. That isn't what went wrong. It was never about that. I just couldn't watch you slowly kill yourself." I sighed, realizing that I'd done far too much damage. Over the years, I'd bombarded Hannah with so much noise, so much sorrow. Hearing what I'd said over the phone, I understood that I sounded far from sober. The drunk who cried wolf. "Mum, what are you talking about?" "That's nothing, it's fine, just go and sit down." There was a muffled voice at the other end of the line, and that was when I realised my daughter, Kate, must be at her mother's house. I could vaguely hear the two of them bickering, and then my daughter snatched the phone from her mother. "Hey, Dad," she cheerfully said. "Hi, Kate," I replied. "Sorry to interrupt. I didn't realise you were visiting Mum." "I booked some time off work. I needed to get away from from London," she corrected. "Plus, I missed you guys. I was going to come and surprise you tomorrow, but the cat's out of the bag now." I smiled, ignoring the real reason for her visit. "That's sweet of you, Kate. Worried about your frail elderly parents?" "Elderly? You're 54. She laughed. "That's the new 44, I guess. Anyway, why were you and Mum arguing? What's happened at the house?" Nothing," I mumbled. "It's nothing, I promise." "You sounded agitated," Kate pressed. "I could hear your voice from the other room." "Yeah." Your mum deafens herself with her phone on full volume. I chuckled, deflecting. "Dad," Kate sighed. "Come on, what is it?" "You're going to think I've gone senile," I said. "Even though, like you said, I'm not an old man yet." "Go on," Kate said. I cleared my throat. "Well, something weird happened this morning. I'm standing on the landing right now, facing a purple door that never used to be there." Kate paused. "Right. And you've not been, you know..." "I've not been drinking," I firmly assured her. "I'm gonna come over early, Dad. I'm worried about you now," Kate said. When my daughter arrived, she seemed utterly perplexed by the damp, odorous, purple door at the end of my upstairs landing. She'd expected a drunken delusion, but I was no inebriated fool. Kate saw the door there, as plainly as day. I mean, obviously I've never lived here, and I don't visit as often as I should, but I'm certain I've never seen that door before, she gulped. You're not teasing me, right? That would be really mean. I'm not teasing you, I insisted. Good, Kate huffed. I've not had a fun week, Dad. Yeah, I muttered, stifling my anger. Ryan. Want me to talk to him? Kate laughed. Oh, Dad, you're a teddy bear. You're not capable of roughing him up. But I appreciate the sentiment. I really do. Then, my daughter did the darndest thing. Without a word, as if she had no survival instincts whatsoever, she walked towards the door. Of course, she didn't really believe in the supernatural. But she would. Wait, what are you doing? I asked. What does it look like I'm doing? Kate scoffed. We're not going to get any answers until we open it. Please don't, I said. I lunged after her, but my daughter was far too nimble. She had already reached the door and rotated its squeaky handle. As the purple gateway opened, I trembled. The door didn't lead to my wall. There was a room back there. A room I didn't recognize. This should be the far wall of the house, Kate whispered. How could there possibly be a room back here? My daughter stepped inside, and I followed, alarm bells ringing in my head. To my surprise, however, I found myself facing nothing but a rather uninspired, banal bedroom. Cream-coloured walls, a single bed with nothing but a mould-ridden mattress, an old oak wardrobe, and a chest of drawers. The bedroom window, a slim wide slit that scarcely allowed any light into the dim room, looked onto my street from the ground level. But we were on the second floor. Then again, why should I have expected anything in a nonsensical room to make sense? What is this place? I wondered aloud. Kate was already hunting for the answer to that question. As she neared the wardrobe, we both froze at a sudden creaking sound. My heart, like a caged animal, began to frantically bang against the brittle bars of my rib cage. Don't do it, I begged. Kate ignored me and threw the doors open. She hesitated for a moment, then she released a relieved laugh. I hurried over and saw that the wardrobe, much like the rest of the room, was mostly empty. All that hung on the clothes rail was a red leather jacket. It was a peculiar addition to the haunted room, the only pristine, well-preserved thing in there. Yet another element of the place that filled my body with growing dread. Truthfully, I'm glad we didn't find anything in there, I said, untying the stubborn knot in my chest. Why? Don't you want an answer? Kate replied. Some things in this world defy reason, Kate. You remember when we saw that ghost, don't you? No. I remember that you saw a ghost. But everything has a rational explanation, Dad, Kate said. Even this. Let's just go back to... I started. Before I could finish my sentence, a low rumbling noise erupted behind us. We turned to see the door, our only exit, slowly sliding into the carpet. An escape route that was shortening with every passing moment. And then, with sinister synchronicity, A guttural groaning sound slithered from the chest of drawers beneath the bedroom window. The top drawer started to open, and I gripped my daughter's shoulders. "Get to the door, now," I bellowed. Kate reverted to an innocent, vulnerable girl, with childlike eyes of terror, seeing with her own eyes that there were such things as monsters. She slipped behind me for cover, but I pushed her towards the ever-sinking doorway. My daughter crawled through the narrow opening, and I heard the horrifying sound of bending wood. Turning to meet my doom, I eyed the thing that was climbing out of a drawer. It was a crying contortionist. A young woman, no older than my daughter, was sitting upright in the top drawer of the chest, sharply clicking her limbs into shape. I didn't know how she'd confined herself to such a small space, but I knew that she wasn't alive. The woman, dressed in a damp yellow floral dress, slithered out of the drawer. Bracing herself with outstretched palms, she landed on the carpet. And then she twisted her lower half, spiraling her legs into formation, before lifting the rest of her body out of the drawer. Her incessant sobbing transformed into frightening frothing as she laid her empty eyes upon me. Through the matted, greasy strands of her waist-length hair, I could see the woman's hatred. The undead and unkempt apparition didn't know me, but her face said otherwise. "You!" she hauntingly hissed. I gasped, almost certain that death had come to reap my soul. Penance for years of bludgeoning my body and mind with liquor. But a hand extended through the rapidly shortening doorway. "Come on, Dad!" my daughter cried. I dropped to the floor, scrambling to squeeze my body through the doorway, which must only have been about 2 feet tall at that point, and I started to pull myself onto the upstairs carpet. I had almost wrenched my final leg free of the haunted room, but the ghoulish woman seized my ankle and unleashed a victorious growl. I screamed, striving to escape both the demon and the door frame threatening to crush my leg. "Save me, Terence," the ghostly woman screeched. With a determined tug, I loosened my leg from her grip, and I slid through the exit before it fully melted into the carpet. The room vanished, and, in its place, there was only my old familiar wall. "Terence Brown," I said. "Do you know him?" Kate asked. I nodded. "Your mum and I called him Brown the Clown. He always makes people laugh. We often talk in the local cafe." "You need to see him," Kate shuddered. "But right now I need some food and a drink." I agreed to phone Terence in the morning, but part of me prayed that the mystery of the new room had resolved itself. No such luck. My daughter stayed the night, and I woke to her piercing scream. Before I even stepped out of my room, I knew the door had returned. It stood at the end of the hallway, purple paint even more rotten than before, and the woodwork seemed to be moving. "Maggots," Kate trembled, staring at the door from her room. I rang Terence, and he agreed to meet me in the cafe. "I suppose I should have pulled you aside for this chat 5 years ago," Terence sighed. "Truth is, I used to live at your place." The greying, middle-aged man scooped his cup of coffee with 2 unsteady hands. The man concealed his pale, fearful face in the steam plume erupting from the drink. We were the only early morning customers, The shop's atmosphere was uncharacteristically still and sombre. "Why did you never tell me?" I asked. We've chatted in this place so many times. Usually you won't stop chatting." Terence sheepishly scratched the nape of his neck, averting my gaze. The often jolly town resident was filling me with deadening dread. His non-committal disposition felt off. I hoped Terence would be my saviour. After all, that was what the abomination said. "Save me, Terence." "I had to get out of that house," he finally admitted. "I had a wife, Molly. Her mind wasn't right. I tried to help her with her mental illness, but she was never the same after she tried to end things." Terence paused to dab a solitary tear trickling down his cheek. 7 years ago, she left. Vanished without a trace. I've worked tirelessly with the police to find her, but I'm sorry for dumping that on you, Ethan. Not our usual type of conversation, hey? And I'm sorry for your loss, Terence. But do you believe what I said? I asked. The man frowned. "A ghost? Well, I've seen things in my time. Things I couldn't explain. And do you think the woman I saw could have been..." I trailed off. The man's eyes broadened as he twigged my implication. "Molly," he whispered. "No, it couldn't have been." "She spoke your name," I said. "She begged you to save her." "Save her?" he replied. Could I still do that? I hung my head dejectedly. "Terence, what I saw in that room wasn't human," Terence mumbled. "Sometimes I see her, hear her." As if to affirm the man's point, a rattling noise jolted me upright. The sound, like an old door wrestling with its hinges, came from a distant spot. My eyes were immediately drawn to the road outside the coffee shop, and there, standing on the pavement, was a haunting apparition. The woman from the chest of drawers. Molly. She raised a finger to her lips, warning me to not utter a sound. I complied, though my mouth was soundlessly agape as the dead woman took sinister strides towards a nearby bus stop. She flitted behind the shelter and did not reappear. "Ethan, are you okay?" Terence wrenched me from my silent nightmare, and I saw recognition in his eyes. He knew what I'd seen. "I'm fine," I lied. "I'd better head home." "You do look a little pale," Terence said, nodding. "Give my best to Kate, won't you?" I smiled and promised to do just that. After shaking the man's hand, I strolled out of the cafe and reflected on the conversation. There was so much to unpack, and my frazzled brain wouldn't complete the mental jigsaw until later. When I arrived home, I was frustrated to see another car on the driveway. The BMW with tinted windows could only belong to one person. Ryan, Kate's boyfriend. And when I stormed into my house, that was confirmed. "Dad," Kate quietly said as I found them talking in the kitchen. "This is Ryan," I coldly finished. The young man gulped, extending a shaky hand for me to receive. I unleashed a wicked little grin and pointedly looked at the hand, whilst keeping mine firmly by my side. Then I moved onwards, changing the conversation. "Kate, we need to talk about the room," I said. "Sure," she replied. "But let's talk here. I've just briefed Ryan on what happened." I squinted disbelievingly. You told him everything? She nodded, and I moved my attention to Ryan, who had finally returned his outstretched hand to his side, wearing a wounded expression on his boyish face. And what do you think, Ryan? I asked. A lot of superstitious nonsense. Ryan animatedly shook his head. No, sir. I believe in that stuff. And Kate's no liar. We all aspire to be so honest, don't we? I sharply asked. Ryan gulped, and Kate shot a look that told me to drop it. Not wanting to upset my daughter, I groaned and begrudgingly obliged. The three of us walked upstairs and eyed the ominous purple door at the far end of the landing. This time, I led the way. When I opened the door, I found the room in the same state as the day before. I shuddered at the prospect of reliving those dreadful events, but I needed answers. I needed to know about the woman, Molly. I knew it was her. This is unbelievable, Ryan whispered. We scoured the room from top to bottom, but there were no clues. I was partly relieved. Mostly I was relieved that the door wasn't shrinking into the carpet. Still, the lack of answers was disconcerting. If I couldn't save Molly, would her vengeful spirit exact its fury upon me? I trembled at that thought. What's that? Kate asked. My daughter was pointing her quivering index finger at a spot on the wooden floor. One of the boards was slightly damper than the others and, by the looks of it, looser. I knelt on the bedroom floor, inspecting the suspect plank of wood. It required little exertion to prise the board free from the floor. Finding nothing but a black hole, I sighed. I'd feared that I would find a body part, but finding nothing was somehow worse. Well? Kate pressed. I shook my head. Nothing to worry about, it's just... A lifeless hand emerged from the darkness, stretching its bony, emaciated extremities towards me. Before my daughter or Ryan could leap forwards to save me, the fingers had seized a handful of my t-shirt. We all screamed. The creature tugged, and I inexplicably tumbled into the tiny chasm beneath the removed floorboard. My body flattened and shrank, squeezing through the narrow slit. After an eternal moment of screeching in an endless void, I returned to the mortal realm. Cold, unforgiving concrete bruised my face, torso, and knees. I groaned, nursing aching joints and potential bone fractures. Rolling onto my back, I absorbed my surroundings. Through some surreal manipulation of reality, I had fallen into the basement. A basement I didn't even know my house had. I stood at the bottom of rickety stairs. They led to a doorway filled with bricks. I was trapped in an underground prison that had been hidden from the outside world. On the wall to my left, there was a purple door. The same purple door as the one on the upstairs landing, and yet this one was much more tangible. I couldn't quite put my finger on why that was so. It didn't feel supernatural. But when I twisted the dusty, long-neglected brass handle, I was horrified to see that the door did not open onto the room I had come to know. No bed, no chest of drawers, and no damp floorboard. However, when I looked a little more closely, I realised I recognised the oak wardrobe. It was rotten and missing its doors, but it was unmistakable. This was the real room, not the apparition that came and went as it pleased. Everything made sense. The window in the upstairs room was a basement window, which explained why it displayed the world at such a low level. The upstairs room was no more than a ghostly flashback, a vision of how the basement room looked in the past. I saw something else in the present-day room which differed from its paranormal counterpart. There was writing on the wall, scratched into the long-faded cream paint, presumably with a sharp nail, were the following words: "My name is Molly Brown, and my husband killed me." My heart sank, and everything made sense. Molly's plea for her husband to save her, Terence's evasiveness in the shop. His wife died down there, the captive of a sadistic tormentor, and her husband had sold the town a twisted tale of an unstable woman who ran away. But Molly had finally shown me the truth. "Ryan!" I turned to the wardrobe, the source of my daughter's wail. It had become a gateway between wardrobes, connecting the basement room to its false version upstairs. Kate saw me through the gate and gasped. "Dad? Where are you?" she cried. Through the wardrobe doorway, I peered into the demonic version of Narnia. Terence had pinned Ryan to the floor. He was twisting a knife into the boy's shoulder, and the kid was screaming in agony. Without a moment's thought, I ran into the wardrobe and returned to the upstairs room. My body collided with Terence, and we fell to the floor. After we clambered to our feet, the snarling man loomed above me. "You just had to go looking for answers, didn't you?" He laughed. "Well, the mystery has been solved. And now you'll join Molly, the ungrateful little girl, beneath the very foundations of this house." Ryan crawled on his back towards Kate, and the two of them embraced in the corner of the room. My only goal was to keep Terence away from my child. I had to keep his attention fixed on me. And that was when I saw the key to ending the night of horror. Through the wardrobe gateway, in the real basement room, that ghoulish contortionist crawled through the cracks between the floorboards, slinking into a paper-thin form. When she had fully emerged, she bulged into a corpse-like entity. Molly stood in the basement, waiting with open arms. After summoning a deep breath, I rugby tackled Terence into the gateway. I almost caught him off guard, but he managed to brace himself on either side of the wardrobe. His victorious grin was utterly horrifying. "I'll look after Kate when you're gone, Ethan," he said. "I have a spare room downstairs that I think would be absolutely perfect for her." As the malevolent man lunged towards me, I prepared to die. But death didn't come. The man stopped a foot in front of me. Terence looked down, as did I, and we saw two translucent limbs wrapped around his waist. His eyes grew teary and fearful. "No," he whispered. "Yes," Molly replied. The undead spirit hoisted Terence backwards, and he screeched as he disappeared into the basement room. "No!" The doors of the wardrobe swiftly slammed shut behind him, encasing him in that bricked-up coffin forever. I helped Ryan and Kate out of the upstairs room, and we watched the door gently fade away. Molly was at rest. The room was gone. Now, it exists only below my feet. I keep thinking about things I missed. Give my best to Kate, won't you? I never mentioned that my daughter was visiting. Well, he's rotting in the basement, and he won't last long down there. The doorway is concealed by brickwork and plaster in the ground floor lobby. Nobody will ever find him, but his beloved wife will keep him company.